First and foremost, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your music journey so the audience can know a little bit about you?
Yeah. So my name is actually Frank Albanesi. um, and I grew up in Michigan. I was born in Pontiac, but grew up around White Lake area. And then I was put into piano lessons at a very young age. I think I was like 2 or 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I remember learning like John Williams songs. So he's like the composer for like the Star Wars movies, Harry Potter, um, Indiana Jones. He's done a bunch of cool composition stuff, but I remember learning the Jurassic Park theme song on piano. And then I just grew up around music because my grandma was really good at piano. And then we had another, I think it was my great aunt who played organs in like the traveling circus.
Oh, wow. This is like sounds
Yeah.
cool.
Well, she played in the traveling circus in like somewhere in Europe, somewhere like this was like 2 generations before me though. So like my great I think it was like late 1800s into early 1900s, that time period. Um and then my mom played piano and I just kind of continued with lessons. And then my dad he played guitar in the army uh a little bit, but he didn't play much around the house. So it wasn't until I was 12 years old where or no, my godfather, he got me a acoustic guitar for Christmas as a gift. And it kind of like changed my life, to be honest. Like I was like, whoa, it's the first time I've seen a guitar. And I started learning chords, and then I started taking lessons from this local instructor called Dave Mendy. And he was like this amazing guitarist, and he taught just like in his free time in retirement at the local like, community high school. But he taught me a ton about like form and stuff, and then as the years went on, like I just kept writing songs. Like I would initially like record on a 4 track, or no, it was actually just I guess it was a 2 track because it was like a stereo. You know those old stereos where it's just like
Mhm.
CD players, but then they have
Yeah.
a tape deck too. Like this one was that, but you could record on tape from the microphone built into it. So I could do like one take with like a chord progression and vocals, and then another take I could play it back and then play like a lead guitar or something. So I started thinking about layering music like that, and then eventually I upgraded to a 4 track where I could do 4 tracks with a cassette, and then eventually I went to a D4, like a digital one, where it's like unlimited tracks nearly. And that was crazy because you could plug an electric guitar in, you could plug a keyboard in, plug a microphone in, and just write songs. And so I did that for a while, and then I joined a bunch of different bands throughout middle school and high school. So just started hopping to different bands with friends and starting bands, and just a lot of them didn't play live or anything. We just kind of wrote a couple songs and like went through the flow of that. Um, until I came to a project called The Revolutionaries, which was my friend Cody and I. It was just a 2 piece, and we just played like White Stripes songs and Queens of the Stone Age songs, and then wrote like pop punk with keyboards. We wrote like an EP, but we didn't get around to recording it, which was kind of sad. Um, but around that similar time, I met these other friends and started a band called Active Novelty. And long story short, we kept writing songs, and then that turned into a band called The Natives. And we started recording some songs, playing some shows, and then that turned into a band called Spare the Thief. Not that exact band, but I did another project called Spare the Thief, and then that turned into a band called Charlie's Orchard. And then that turned into a band called Aviva, which is another project I'm in right now. It's kind of like a prog rock, like hard
Mhm.
rock kind of project, where I play guitar and then do vocals. And then Maddock Park was like, so Maddock Park is the name of a actual park where I
Yeah.
was living in 2018. So I was in Michigan, and my dog and I just used to love to walk to this park called Maddock Park. And there was something so like peaceful about it. And I used to listen to music while walking my dog, and like it was like one of the highlights of my day is just like going there, letting him off the leash. They had an area where the dogs could run around and play and stuff, but it was so like lush with trees and stuff. And I don't know, there's something so inspiring about it. And then one morning I woke up and I had this idea for a song. It just flowed out on piano, and I was like, it's hard to describe, but I just felt like I felt inspiration to start a project. And when I was thinking of a name, Maddock Park just came to mind very naturally. So then I just went with it, and I started an Instagram page and Facebook page, and I just started recording like, you know, covers and kind of previews of songs. And eventually that turned into a song called Rebel the Cause. And that was the first song that I recorded for this album. Um, and I was looking to learn how to like record vocals better. So I
Mhm.
called up this local studio and I was like, hey, can I come in and just like book a session to record vocals for a song I'm trying to do? And they're like, yeah, of course. So I came in, and then I just like serendipitously met this guy named Jeff Koss, and he was starting a record label called Hunger Monster Records. And they were like kind of looking for artists. And he's like, we somehow like sparked the conversation. He's like, yeah, man, can you just send us some of your music and we'll listen to it. And if we like it, then, we'll try to move forward. Um, so I did that, and then they got back to me eventually, and they're like, hey, man, we'd love to collab on an album. And I was like, oh, super cool. So then that started the process of this album, which is just a collection of songs I was feeling over like, from 2018 to recently. And we worked together on that. Manny Cut, Amanda Moynihan, Alex Castengay, um, Jason Rowe, Paul Jaros. I'm just shouting out all my collaborators. But that just turned into like a family. And like what I love about that is I met so many people through that project and continue to. And I put myself in situations that previously I probably would have felt uncomfortable doing. Like,
Mhm.
like I wasn't sure what to do as an artist. Like I was like, I was always kind of shy about it, I guess. Like I would write songs kind of privately. And then like pretty much I was the only one hearing them for a long time. And so it was kind of like a scary experience to share songs with someone that you wrote and then have them kind of either talk about it with you or, I mean,
Yeah.
everyone was super supportive, but yeah, that turned into Vital Love, which is like our Maddock Park like first album, which is on, Spotify and stuff right now. And now it's like it's cool. There's people literally, listening to this from different parts of the world.
Yeah, I saw the Instagram post that you all made, like that you made that showed how many listeners were from like different locations. I think New Mexico was the number one.
Yeah, yeah, Mexico City.
Yeah.
That's so cool to me because I don't know, like I know Mexico City. I mean, it looks like an amazing place, and I've seen videos on YouTube of like bands like Arctic Monkeys playing at festivals there. So I think they have a taste for like, rock, alternative, like punk, and obviously like pop and other genres. But um, yeah, it's really cool to like see there's an audience kind of growing in Mexico City for Maddock Park. Like it's really inspiring. So it's like before the album, it was just me listening, and now it's like if I write new songs, I'm like, oh wow, like if I release this, like maybe some people in Mexico City could hear it or something.
Yeah, so you're finding your genre. Did you But when you started making music, did you think it would be harder to find an audience than you're seeing it to be?
Um, yeah, to be honest, like I guess I wasn't even thinking like about that at all, nearly. Like I was just kind of like, because I didn't know, like it's not what I'm learning now is like it's, it's a journey for sure, and it's like if you put music out there, like there's no guarantees anyone will listen to it. Like it is really important, if you really care about sharing music, like to try to take steps to reach out to people, kind of just let them know you're here.
Mm.
And most people, I mean, many people will probably, because everyone has different tastes. Like a lot of people won't like it, or a lot of people might not listen, but it's just important to, really um, respect each little step and each little kind of success along the way, because sometimes things are slow, and like it's easy for people, at least these are conversations I've had with other artists, like it's easier for people to kind of start doubting their art
Mhm,
if there's not people like listening to it, or if they're not finding like a level of success that they kind of imagined.
mhm. Yeah,
So I just constantly like remind myself that I love doing this. Like this is something I've loved since I was like 2 years old. And
yeah, I
like,
think that's really important too. I know, like, you talked a little bit earlier about how music is a way for you to sort of express yourself when you're writing, and what you're feeling. And I think sometimes it's easier for artists to remember like why they wrote a song and how they felt rather than thinking about, am I going to get people to actually listen to it? It should be just be authentic with yourself, because a lot of
yeah.
people I've interviewed have like talked about the songs having a deeper meaning for them,
Mm.
and I find it really interesting that um, like a lot of people want to see success in numbers, but I think success is really how you can express yourself through your art.
That's amazing. I 100% agree. Like it's kind of like that's why I was so shy, kind of, is because like I write songs for that I enjoy
Hmm.
personally, and I write lyrics that I think are meaningful to me, from life experiences and things, and through reflection. So like when I'm in that mode, I'm not thinking at all about like, is this presentable, or what are other people going to think about this? Like I'm literally just writing it for myself. And like that to me is what I love about art too, is because everyone is unique. Like, I mean, you can write songs that sound similar, but at the end of the day, like everyone's timbre with vocals is slightly different. Everyone's like choice of chord progression, even if you play the same chords, you play them a
Hmm.
little bit differently. Like there's just like tiny, like everyone is, it's one of the only things you can do seemingly where like you can do something kind of, unique.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's some ways where a song to you might have a different meaning than it does to someone else. So even if you're thinking, oh, a lot of people won't connect to this song, someone might hear it and really begin to see it in a different light that you didn't expect for it to be in.
yeah, yeah. Like when I'm writing songs or singing, I'm kind of thinking of memories from my life.
Hmm.
And I know that people have different memories. And like not everyone, I haven't shared these memories with everyone, at least verbally. So I'm really curious about what other people think about when they hear some of these songs.
Yeah,
Um, and that to me is like the beauty of art too, is like, you're trying to, it's hard to describe, but it's basically just, my goal is just to try to be as honest as I can and write things that I'm proud of. And then, if I'm proud of that, it's a success already. And like
hmm,
any numbers or anything like that is just kind of like interesting to me, but it's not a measure of success. Like the people, from like Mexico City, for example. Like I just kind of find that interesting. I'm like, oh wow, like I would not have guessed in a million years that, people in like Istanbul, Turkey would enjoy maybe a song, that I came up with in my room in Michigan,
Mhm.
It's just like, I don't know. It's also a reminder that music is such like a universal language across borders and things.
Yeah,
And
sound is immaterial is a good phrase that I found in a podcast.
yeah, that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, I think that I can think that's kind of what a lot of artists feel like. It's harder to make money in the music industry nowadays, but I feel like as an artist, you begin to enjoy other things. It's not just about money; it's about sharing that. And so, in that, like, I guess podcast I listened to, it was really just about talking about how you can't own sound. You can only enjoy it, share it, and listen to it, which I think is a good thing to think about.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because like in other parts of life, like, some things get so structured, or, there's so many labels thrown around sometimes. And like art is one of the only things where, like you said, that no one owns it. Like no, like you don't have to pay money to someone to to be able to express yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like the beauty of it. And so I guess in interviewing all of you artists so far, it's really nice to like hear about like what made you passionate to begin with, and how even if you're not thinking about, oh, I'm passionate because of this, your emotions start to showcase what you feel about music. And I think it touches on what you spoke about a little bit earlier about like your stories and your songs might not be similar to someone else's, but it's interesting because even if your stories aren't the same, if the emotions relate, then that's how the songs are universal, because someone might,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I'm very, I don't know, I'm very like thoughtful.
Oh my gosh, you are doing an amazing job. Like you are, um like what you just described is like beautiful, like it's so accurate. Like I totally feel that. It's like I could hear a song from someone in a different language or something, but just like the emotion behind the chord progression, or the choice in like, rhythms or something else. Like I can almost feel, like I feel that way about like punk music, for example. Like it's like I could listen to punk rock from like any part of the world. And there's that vibe, or it's like hip hop is that vibe.
Hmm.
Um, I think hip hop and punk in particular are kind of like intertwined. Like I almost consider hip hop a form of punk, and punk like a form of hip hop, just like a rock form.
Yeah,
But it's like, yeah, it's beautiful. It's really cool. Like I love seeing people feel free, and it's like one of the only things I do where I feel free.
yeah. And so I guess as an artist, I want to ask you like if this is different, because I listen to a lot of music, like a little bit too much. And I noticed like there's a very different feeling from artists to a casual listener, and I wanted to like get an opinion on it. And so so I'm like an avid listener to like Korean music, French music, Spanish music. And I noticed there's kind of this idea in music where certain songs are more, I guess, like ideal. And so if you say, hey, I'm listening to a Spanish song, it'll translate better with an audience than saying, hey, I'm listening to a French song. And so I wanted to know, do you think like for musicians, it's like a little bit easier to transcend different languages of music than a casual listener? I know this is like a very broad question and very weird question, but I'm kind of curious because I think about it a lot. Like I always think about, is it like for a musician, is it less strange that someone might listen to like 10 different languages just because they connect with the song versus feeling like you have to listen to the status quo. Like you must listen to songs that are popular or songs that are trendy to kind of still have like a common ground with other listeners. This is such a weird question.
Oh my gosh, though, that's an amazing question. Wow. It's really hard to answer for other people
Yeah.
because I feel like I can only answer for myself in this situation. Um, Although I could comment on what you're saying about like popular music and how sometimes there's almost like this peer pressure almost to like listen to the new Drake song or I mean not that it's Drake. I think Drake is actually incredibly talented. It's just the idea of like being able to venture off and listen to like some obscure song from some local band in, you know, Venezuela or something, just because you
Mhm.
feel it versus being afraid that people might judge you for liking kind of those choices in music kind of thing. Like I almost feel like it makes complete sense. Like for me I listen to music with no kind of pre-qualifying factor. It's just kind of like I listen for like if people are being honest, it's almost like you can pick up on honesty, you know?
Mhm.
Like
Like
you
the
can almost hear
sincerity.
it. Yeah, you can hear sincerity. Like if it feels sincere to me, then then I'm enjoying it. Like it doesn't matter like if it's pop or death metal or like spoken word.
Mhm.
It's just like if someone's being themselves or they're being courageous to say something or do something that I can feel is like, they're not informed. They're not trying to fit a mold or something seemingly. Like they're just like, this is me.
Yeah.
It's almost like this other sense where I can like sense it. I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then with popular music, sometimes like there can be amazing pop songs. But some songs I feel like if they feel formulated too much, or they feel like, they were like, if it just feels like there's something about it that is not genuine or as genuine
Mhm.
as it could be, then I kind of it's hard for me to get really into it or listen to it again. Like I feel
Yeah.
like when people listen to something multiple times, especially, like it really shows that they connected with something. Um,
I think there's also just this idea of how some music can be very formulaic. So if a particular artist gets really popular on one specific song, they'll tend to always do that formula for maybe the next two or three albums because they know it would attract an audience. But I
yeah,
it's really hard to do that because in the end, sometimes your audience might be like you're not growing or they feel as though your music is all the same because they're only listening to maybe like one song of your album and
yeah,
the title track. And title tracks are formalized in a way that it's always going to sound similar to previous ones because that's what initially attracted your audience. And so it's hard for an artist to sort of branch out because of their audience, but it's also really hard for the audience to sort of realize the reason that they're getting so many similar songs by that artist is because they might be afraid to show a little bit more of themselves or a little bit of a change in their music in fear of like losing the people that they brought in initially.
that's an amazing point. That's an amazing point. I feel like, especially if you're like finding success, like quote unquote success. In other words, like, if one of your songs becomes popular enough to where you can, go on tour or you start making money from it, like I think it's hard to there's a ton of pressure then, on that person or that group to like continue to do that so that they continue like I guess find success, quote unquote. In other words, like that's really tough. It's really tough. Like I feel like some of my favorite bands have even fallen into that trap, but they're so I love their songwriting so much that even when they write a similar kind of song, I usually end up, you know, just enjoying it still.
Mhm.
But I agree that there's this like, you know, if they don't change it up, or how do I word this? It's kind of like for people who are authentic under that pressure, like that's a pretty rare thing, I feel like.
Mhm.
Like it takes a ton of courage and maturity. Um, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. I guess you have to analyze different artists differently.
Mhm.
Like,
I personally understand that because I'm not a music major, I promise, but I'm minoring in like media communications kind of courses,
oh,
and
cool, cool.
in our recent like I guess chapter we read, we discussed this idea about popular music being very linear because an artist is more scared to branch out than let's say a more obscure artist who is able to like test the waters, and it really translates into everything when you think about it, like content creators for example. Smaller creators might want to branch out and do multiple things to garner an audience, whereas someone who gets popular for one thing is going to only do that one thing to hopefully stay relevant. But as like your audience changes or gets older, they start to expect you to also grow. And so I guess
Yeah,
that's kind of what an artist tries to do, but they struggle with that shift because they don't know exactly when their audience is also going to change with them.
yeah. That's such a good point. I
Yeah.
feel like I've been with, I mean, like a band like Coldplay, for example.
Hmm.
Like I've been listening to them for like almost my whole life. Um, I was with them during Parachutes era, and I loved Parachutes. I thought X and Y was amazing. I thought Rush of Blood to the Head was amazing. It's actually one of my favorite albums ever. And then Viva La Vida was really cool. Um, but I could start to feel them shifting from that point on, you know? Like they started writing like Malo Zalito was really cool too. Um, but it's interesting a band like that because
Hmm.
they've written some of the deepest songs I've ever heard and some of like the fluffiest songs I've ever heard. You know?
Yeah.
It's like it's hard to describe, but it's like I think some people, you know, can go to that place at almost any moment, like that deeper place.
Hmm.
And like you might see it pop up here and there. But then they can also like write for the times or they can write for like a pop formula because they're just very talented artists. So they can kind of like shift their ways to do that. And I feel like some artists do that. Um and yeah, I don't know, it's a really good analysis though. Like I'd
Yeah.
be curious to hear more about what your class kind of like discussed. But like, for me, it's like, you know, sometimes I love pop music for, you know, pop music's sake, but at the same time, like I don't really get as
Mhm.
deep into a lot of pop music as I do into like some of my favorite artists who I admit are kind of like indie artists. And I don't know
Mhm.
why that is. Like maybe I
Yeah.
have to reflect further on that.
Yeah, I know like there's one example that I hear a lot based on like YouTube and everything like that where people kind of call it like the Disney Channel effect, which is very strange, but it's basically to show like a drastic change in an artist. So for example, I can use Miley Cyrus for one. She was very much like a very popular artist on Disney Channel, did a lot more of like a safe music, pop music genre, and once she left that company, she tried to do a drastic shift into like trying to show she's an adult by cursing, by being naked, and it's kind of, they call it the Disney effect because once artists leave Disney Channel, most of them go immediately to a polar opposite
Uh,
perspective, to show their audience, hey, look, I'm growing and I'm changing. But for the audience, it's very quick and drastic rather than it being like something like over time. Like I guess we could say Taylor Swift is like an artist who's tried to change with her
yeah,
audience, though the lyricism is very similar, the music itself is changing. And so the audience knows that she's not going to be like their country pop princess. She's going to change and become like a 27-year
yeah,
old and have different experiences in her songs.
yeah. That's such a good point. That actually reminds me of Adele kind of too. Like
Mhm.
I was a big fan of Adele with like Chasing Pavements and like some of those early songs. And then like she
Yeah.
came out with her next album and I like how she does the ages, But you
Yeah.
could tell like Adele really matured over those three albums. And I feel
Hmm.
like her audience probably did it with her. But it's a good example of someone I think who matured like they didn't sway too far though. Like I feel like the formula in the first album is similar to the one in the other albums, but she just grew lyrically to be like, she's just a very honest lyricist. I think that's what gets people. Like she's like deeply just letting it all out for people, which makes her
Hmm.
super vulnerable and also super strong at the same time because she has courage to do that. And like whether that album or her album sold, 100 million copies or zero, like that music is incredibly moving. Like I love that music, not even because I love the music, it's just the authenticity there is
Hmm.
just so almost therapeutic to hear.
Yeah, this I feel like this is a very different interview from ones I've done previously. Like the others are more question and answer. I feel like this is more discussion, which I find really interesting because I'm learning more about you as an artist, um, while you're also answering questions people have asked, just like not intentionally knowing that you're answering a lot of questions that I received. So that's this is
Cool.
very interesting. For that.
Yeah, I love this vibe. I hope you're, like discussion. This is what I naturally do with friends and you know, people I talk to as well. So, you know, I'm also not I haven't done a lot of interviews, Q&A, so if I'm just like not doing it right. I
Oh
mean,
no,
I know
this is
it's not that's right or wrong. It's more so like
depends on the interviewer. I think like how they tend to like dictate, I don't want to say dictate, but kind of like how they dictate their interviews is typically just like a format that a lot of them stick with. I have the luxury of this being like a college radio where I can really just do interviews with whatever makes the artist feel comfortable because I'm very much like I want like you all that I interview to feel comfortable sharing like things with the audience because I think the audience really appreciates that sense of authenticity that you all bring, um,
that's
which
cool.
is really nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, and honestly, I feel like you're an awesome and very welcoming and talented interviewer because like
Thank you
I
so
love that you yeah, I love that you go with the flow as well because I mean I admit like I can go on tangents sometimes, but I love that you're like we're bouncing ideas back and forth and it's kind of like in doing that we're kind of building on the same themes from the initial question,
much.
but
Hmm.
it kind of unveils like other questions that are
Hmm.
kind of inferred from that analysis. So that's really fun. That's cool.
Yeah, I think like we're actually at the 30 minutes, which is cool.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I do like to end interviews with the artist saying their favorite song or album at the moment because I do like to add them into our radio's rotation and stuff like that.
Oh nice. Ooh, this is a tough question.
It always is. Every artist says this is a hard question.
I think it's so hard because like I love so much music and it shifts so much that I know it's gonna change in like a day, but gosh, I've been going through kind of like, okay, well, can I give you a couple things and then like you can just pick ones that
Yeah, I can do that.
um so old school Coldplay, like The Scientists
Hmm.
and Yellow, and Fix You. Been listening to those songs again. I'm like, wow, these are incredible songs.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was, oh gosh, what was it called? I was actually listening to Denver music recently, like just Denver artists.
Yeah.
So actually, I'll give a shout out to another Denver artist. Um, Let me just make sure I have her name right here. Oh my gosh, I was just here. One moment.
You're all good. You're all good.
Her name is Zainib, Zanib, and she's an Afro-Nubian artist,
Oh.
and she plays violin and basically like 105.5 here in Denver. They reached out about Rebel the Cause, one of those
Mhm.
songs we have, and then they put it on a Spotify playlist, and I was listening to the playlist, and then I learned of Zainab from the same playlist. I was like, whoa, I really love her music. So I'll give her a shout out here. And there's also other Denver artists that I'm like huge fans of now, but I'm just trying to, meet some of the other artists in this community. And
Mhm.
it's really, because I'm not sure when we can play live again because of COVID,
Mhm.
but until then, I hope that at least meet people over Zoom and stuff.
Yeah.
Push me down, oh, kick me out, oh, chew me up, oh, spit me out, oh, lock me up, oh, burn the key, oh, shot to the heart and bury me alive. Still I rise, 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 still I At my back, oh, watch me bleed, oh, deny the attack, oh, enjoy the laugh, oh, seen it before, oh, no room for more, oh, claims innocence with blood still dripping from your fingertips. Still I rise, 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 still Set the trap, oh, place the cheese, oh, track the muscle, wait and see, oh, judge my words, oh, before I speak, oh, don't underestimate what eyes can't see.